Hello everyone, it's Miss Cheryl at Sacred Heart Montessori, and I am excited to tell you our Bible story for this week. Now we have just finished our seasons of Advent, and now we are in what we call the Christmas season, where we are celebrating the story of Jesus' birth and then the stories that happen after that. Now, all through our Advent story, we kept finding surprises where God would do things differently than how people often think things will happen. Do you remember some of those stories? First, we had the story of Zechariah and his wife Elizabeth, and everyone thought they were too old to have a baby. But God told them that they were going to have a special baby and to name John, who would help prepare people for Jesus and teach people God's way of peace. But Zechariah didn't believe the angel at first, did he? And so he couldn't talk until the baby was born, and they named him John. And then we had the story of Mary. And the angel visited Mary and gave her the important job of being the mom for Jesus, right? And even though it seemed crazy, she said yes, and she believed the angel's message. And then she went and she visited her cousin Elizabeth to share the good news. And now, did Joseph believe the story about the angel at first? At first he thought it seemed too crazy, but then he had a dream where an angel told him that the story that Mary had was true. And so then he became the dad for Jesus. Now, do you remember where God's special baby was born? Was it someplace fancy? A really nice hospital or hotel? No. It was where the animals sleep, right? In a barn or a cave. They didn't have a lot of wood, but they did have a lot of caves near Bethlehem, so they think maybe it was a cave where they kept the animals. That might have been the very first place that Jesus slept. And who were the first people who heard this exciting news that Jesus, God's Son, was born? Was it really important people? Rich people? Fancy people? It was the people who take care of the sheep, right? The shepherds. And so they were the ones who saw this exciting announcement about God's Son being born. And they were so excited, remember? And they ran to see the new baby and told everybody about it. Well, today our story is about some other people who come to visit little baby Jesus. It didn't happen right away. Maybe he might have been like a year old by the time they got there. But there's some surprises in this story too. So, today the people in our story are also from the continent of Asia. Now, Jesus was born right here near the sea here in this part of Asia. Really close to Africa, and not too far from Europe. And the people who come to visit Jesus in this story are also from Asia, but they're from a little bit further to the east, maybe around here somewhere. It looks like a small way on the globe here, but it's actually really far, especially if you're walking. It would take days and days and days, maybe even months, maybe even a year. Big journey. Well, Jesus' family was Jewish. That was the name of the people group they belonged to, and that was their religion, the things that they believed about God and their different customs. And the Jewish people really liked to just stick with themselves. They did things differently than other people, and so they didn't really usually mix too much with people from other religions. So one of the surprises in our story today is that the people who came to visit Jesus are from a very different religion. We call them the Magi. And that's kind of like magician. They studied the stars a lot, and tried to understand what things that were going to happen from what they saw in the stars. So, one night, while they were out studying the stars, they saw something new that they had never seen before. There was a different star, and they said, "Oh, this is a very important sign. This tells us that a new king has been born. We must go and visit this new king." So they gathered everything they would need for this very long journey. And they got some very special gifts together. Now, they might not be things that we would think were special, but back then they were very expensive and very special gifts. And then they went on the long, long journey to see if they could find this new king. So they might have had camels to help them, and they might have had fancy clothes, and they probably had lots of helpers. Now, we don't know how many people were in this group that came to visit. The Bible tells us 3 different gifts they bring, so sometimes people say 3 kings, but we don't actually know that. It might have been a huge group. Probably was, because to travel across the desert, you would need a lot of helpers. But they went on this long journey, studying the stars to tell them where to go. And the stars led them to the place where baby Jesus and his parents were living. So they brought their gifts, they bowed down, and they thanked God for letting them see this newborn king. It was just a little baby, but they knew that it was something special. So here's a picture I can show you. We don't know what they look like, what their clothes were like, but artists make guesses about what they might have been like. And so this is what one artist drew about what the group might have looked like that came to see baby Jesus. And the gifts they brought were gold and frankincense and myrrh. Maybe I'll see if I can find a video that will tell you more about what those things were like. And we call them the Magi. Alright, so that is our story for today about how the Magi saw from the stars how to find baby Jesus. And even though they came from a very different background than Jesus' family, God gave them the message that a very special baby had been born that would be good news for all people all over the world.